Hello, hello. Welcome to National Squirrel Day. We were actually told that it was National Squirrel Day by a member of ours, and we didn't fact check her. So we're hoping that it's right and that it's a thing. Um, if it's not, I mean, it is for us.
Yeah,
So
we've
go
just
Nutmeg.
decided today's the day. Today is his day. Wait, is Nutmeg a boy or a girl?
Definitely a boy. We've always called him
That's
a
what I
boy.
thought. Okay.
Yeah,
Just realized
definitely a
we never
boy.
really defined that. And
He's
then
like basically the only boy in the tea house, basically.
basically.
Anyway, we are happy to be back and talking with you guys. We were just discussing what we want to talk about and could go one of two ways, and they're both completely opposite. One, the disrespect that is apparently a theme that's in Amber's life right now. And two, meditation and how our meditative practices are working out for us. So, which one do you want to talk about first?
We can talk about disrespect because it's an interesting theme happening and for people around me, like not just I've just heard so many people talk about I've been so disrespected or you're disrespecting me or this is disrespectful. And I just started reading Mel Robbins' Let Them Theory book, and I'm going to tell you that I don't feel disrespected by anyone anymore. Quite literally, I feel so much freedom. It's not anything that has been new to me. Like, I think there's different versions of this that I've done throughout my life to be unbothered by people. But for some reason, maybe it's because I just needed it right now, and so it's feeling very satisfying to me. Um, so I listened to her for a long time. I followed her for a long time, and I love her voice and I love how real she is. And so I was like, why have I not got this book yet? So I obviously ordered it while I was getting my nails done. And I feel like in that short amount of time I was in the nail salon, my life was transforming in front of me. So it's funny because people will say, well, like I already know this, but like when I heard it this way, and
Mhm.
I think it's the way that she words it. And it's very much about detachment and then also calling your power back simultaneously. So, for those of you that don't know, it's really about letting everyone, Shaylee likes to call it mind your business. It's like letting everybody have their experience. And it feels relevant to me because I have a lot of transitional things happening in my life, and it can be a little bit chaotic. And I found myself wanting to control outcomes because I'm a human. And I don't consider myself a very controlling person because I can usually very much surrender, but there are certain things that are directly impacting my life that really were wanting me to control them. And and it's decisions being made by like my mom or my partner or whatever it is, right? There's all these things happening. And she talks about the let them theory being um, when something like that is happening, either someone has an opinion about you, or they are judging what you're doing, or you're judging what they're doing. It's just like let them. And I thought, well, that's such an interesting concept and such an easy mantra to keep. Just let them, because you can't control what they're going to do anyways. But the second part that I never understood until I started listening to the book was, and let me, because then it's like you let them do what they're going to do. And the level of like, there's something about the freedom that it comes when you say those two words. I'm just inviting people to try it. When you're feeling like that rise of like, in your body, like you need to do something about it. And it's like, okay, let them. And then let me decide what I will do. Like, is this something that's going to impact me for a day, for 5 minutes, or if it's going to impact me for a week, then I probably need to do something more, either create a boundary or something a little bit more. Where if it's like the person at the grocery store or the person driving really slow in front of you in traffic, I'm speaking to
Mhm.
my boyfriend who apparently listens to these podcasts.
Mhm.
It's like, let them, because in 5 minutes, you're not even going to be thinking about it. And it's very in line
Mhm.
with what me and you talk about with the impact of stress and your nervous system being dysregulated on your own health. And so you're basically choosing yourself, and every time you choose to not be affected by all the chaos. She does say, however, there is a secondary thing to it in regards to children because you can't just be letting them like run feral, especially if you have younger children. So there is a different version of this for that. But for the adults in your life and the strangers in your life. That has felt very freeing. And I also like relate it to horses. And people take things that horses do so personal, and we're always like, it ain't personal. So it's
Yeah.
like, just let them be what they want to be right now. And then I can decide from over here in my own little bubble what I'm actually going to do about what I need to do. Like, do I need to do anything about this? So that's where I've been at.
Well, I love that too because it just kind of goes back to how we want to control our environment and our circumstances, and we need things to change around us so that we can feel better versus like being able to cultivate that inner peace and the world around you can be in chaos or whatever, and you can still be peaceful. Like you can be okay when those around you are not okay, which is like something that I feel like you and I have been practicing for at least a year now, trying to work on that. You know what's so interesting? I'm gonna call my husband out. Um,
Does he
he
listen to the
because
podcast?
he
Don't let,
he
don't let,
doesn't listen to the
don't
podcast.
let Doug tell him about the podcast. We have to keep that
Well, we
separate.
had this whole like conversation because Justin told me last night that he doesn't like the term calling your power back. And I
Oh.
was like, why? It's so relevant. And he was like, no, it's so dumb. Like, I didn't take anything from you. Like, what are you calling back from me? And I was like trying to explain to him, like, no, it's a realization or recognizing that you are giving a lot of attention, a lot of focus, a lot of energy to a certain thing, person, place, thing, like, your external environment. And you have a realization that you don't like the way that feels or whatever. And you call it back to you like, oh, I need to tend to myself. I need to mind my own business. I need to let them, like, whatever it is. And he was so hung up on the fact that, like, I think it's because he doesn't like doing anything quote wrong. So he was like, but why are you calling it back from me? He's like, give me a scenario. Like, I need to know. So then I was speaking of disrespect, it's like also relevant. So I was like, okay, well, what if I like took the trash out, but instead of putting the trash in the bin, I just left it on the side and got all nasty and gross and it rained and you were gone for the weekend, but I wasn't gonna do anything. And like, you're the one that has to take the trash out. And so you get home and you see that. And he's like, no, he's like, then I just think you're being an asshole and you're disrespecting me. And I was like, see, but why wouldn't you just be like, hey, you made this mess. Like, can you clean it up, please? I'm not dealing with that. Like, why wouldn't you call your power back from the situation? And he's like, no, it has nothing to do with that. You need to not be disrespectful to me, knowing. And like, we went on this whole conversation. I thought it was so fascinating that he was like so hung up on the fact that like I cannot call my power back from like him in any way because he's not taking anything from me. Like that
Yeah.
is like where his mind wants to go.
hmm It's like about the responsibility. You're not taking it, but I'm giving it. I'm taking it back because I gave it. You didn't take it. I gave it. You didn't even know about it, actually.
Yeah.
You were
Yeah.
you were just an innocent bystander. Me giving you my power.
And I tried to explain that to him, and then I was just at the end, like we got to our driveway gate, and I was like, "This is the end of this conversation. We're just going to agree to have different viewpoints, and that's that." But it was just so funny because he was just like, "Well, then I just feel disrespected," and then I'm like, "Well, then you're giving your power to me, and you're giving your power to that situation. You are choosing to feel disrespected. You could see that and be like." Fuck it, I'm not touching that trash either. Like someone's gonna do it, but I'm not going to. But instead, he sees it as like blatant disrespect and whatever. And I chose the trash because it's like sensitive subject for him because one time I did
Oh no.
throw a bunch of boxes in the shop and I just like chucked them in there and like didn't I didn't break them down or anything. And he is always the one that takes the trash out. So I chose that because he likes to hold on to that little guy and remind me that so yeah, I'm curious how people feel about the sentiment of calling your power back. It's fascinating how like some things that are said people don't like. Like I have a friend that doesn't like boundaries. She doesn't like the word boundaries and calling it boundaries because she thinks that it's like a hard set thing that is like unmovable or like when you set a boundary, you're basically like I can't think of it in the way that she says it, but it's based like, especially when it comes to horses, she's like, I don't like it when people say boundaries because then it means like, she feels like it means your horse has to compromise and you have to do things this way because I'm setting a firm boundary. But if
Hmm.
you called it something else, I feel like it would shift in an
I feel like a
interesting way.
boundary to me is like a net. It just like filters out what is serving me and what isn't. And I don't feel like you're taking the ability away from the horse to choose itself in that moment either. It can choose to move away, it can choose lots of different things. You just can't choose to do it at me in my personal body. Like we
Yeah.
can, but and I think if the boundaries are reciprocal, like if you're honoring what they're saying and I don't
Are
feel
those
like
crows?
they are.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt. However,
Squirrel!
speaking of boundary, no, it's because I can hear the crows so loud, but the freaking trippiest thing is happening because crows are flying in front of my window, but I'm hearing them like on your, like my crows are not talking, but I can hear the crows through my microphone, like through my headphones. It's a weird, oh God, I have to mute myself.
Oh man.
Oh my gosh, what was that? I think some sort of energy
Just left your throat
literally
chakra.
went like through the crows over here and your crows like ate it up. I don't know. Something just happened.
They're
It's just
usually
like,
not this loud. There's been so many because they disked the field in front of my house, and so they're like out there hardcore right now. So there's so many like lined up on my telephone wire, like, and they're very chatty the last couple days. It's interesting because usually you can't hear anything that's happening on the outside.
yeah, I can never hear anything. It's just the weirdest thing too, because crows were like flying in front of my window, and I was like, "What?" I was like, "Why can't I hear you right now?" And then I'm like, "But that doesn't sound. Your voice don't match your body. That doesn't sound like you."
Oh my goodness.
Okay, side note, one more squirrel. Amber and I were talking about this right before we got on the call. What is it called when you have an experience? What did I call it before? Remember Vu? No,
Yeah.
or
No,
something like.
transformation vu.
So sometimes, and I'm curious if anyone has ever had this happen to them. Amber and I were both like sharing how this has happened to us before, but it's like deja vu, except when I am talking to a client, or it doesn't even have to be a client, sometimes just like a random person, or like I do, it could be like an act of kindness, it could be anything. And instantly in that moment, something will happen. Like two hawks flew in front of my window after a conversation I just had. And I just had like this knowing that the conversation that we just had is going to put this person in a direction of her highest and best good. And it was like a remembrance or like a knowing that kind of felt like deja vu. But it can happen with like certain things. And I think that's where we talk about listening to your intuition too, because there will be like a certain like premonition thing that happens. Like, for example, I convinced Justin to come to the float spa with me yesterday, and we sat in the sauna and we like floated in like the magnesium salt. But when we were in the sauna, I knew that it wasn't going to be ready. Like I was like, we're going to get out of this sauna and we're going to go out and they're going to be like, ooh, sorry, like float's not ready. Like you guys might have to come back or something. And that's what happened. There was a new girl and she like double booked it and we were 15 minutes past. But it's like when stuff like that happens, like with this little knowing I had, and I just know that this is going to put her in the right direction. Or you have a knowing that you need to like take a supplement out of your horse's feed, or you have a knowing that something like that is going to happen. What is that?
It's just your intuition, isn't it? Or like that specific sensation.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. I guess it's different from a knowing. It's different from like your intuition where you get like the knowing download.
Hmm.
This, it's like almost like it's like an elevated knowing because it doesn't feel like it's happened before, but it's like
Hmm.
there's an energetic piece that manifests in the universe. Like, for example, I thought about it, and then I asked Justin how much time we had left, and he said 2 minutes and 22 seconds. And then I was like, oh, that's fascinating. Or like a hawk will have. So it's weird because it's like a little
Mm,
tangible thing happens at the same time.
mm-hmm. Yeah, both things at once. Is it
Hmm.
your intuition or knowing, or is it, did you just manifest that? That's what I always get hung up on, like the float spa thing.
Okay, well, here's what happened to me after that. I was starving, hungry. No, I don't like it when people say starving because here in America, we're not starving. Okay,
We're
so
not
we need to
starving.
stop saying that.
Yeah, we need to
Um,
calm down.
we need to fucking calm the fuck down. Okay, so I was wanting some food in my body, and we saw to go to the grocery store, and then we were sitting at a stoplight, and I was like, I'm gonna go across and get fries from Whataburger. But then I had like this intrusive thought that I was gonna go through the intersection, get like plowed into, like T-boned in my like nice car. And I was like, oh my God. Like immediately I was like, why did that just happen to me? That used to happen to me when I mowed the grass all the time. I don't
Oh
know
yeah, the
why.
turtles.
But do you remember that? I would like be so worried about chopping up turtles, or I'd be like, what if I just went in this ditch and like flipped over and this thing was like chopping up my foot? And I would have like the worst intrusive thoughts. So then immediately after that intrusive thought, I was like, no, I got to visualize getting through this intersection alive and well. So I visualized that. And then my mind, in like a split second, was like, yeah, and then I'm going to go through the driveway. There's going to be no one there. I'm going to get a large fry, and there's going to be so much fries. They're going to be overflowing into the bag. So then Justin's going to eat the ones out of the bag, and I'll have plenty of time to eat all the fries I want before he like hogs down on my fries. And all of that like went through my mind because I always say I get like food scarcity around him because he eats so fast. And I'm like, there's not gonna be enough for me. I get so worried. Like whenever like he'll be like, oh, do you want to share an appetizer at the restaurant? And I'm like, oh God, I'm already like stressed out that I have to eat fast because you're gonna like gobble it down. Anyway, it's a story for another time. Um, but so we go through the drive-through and literally he like pulls out the fries and like puts it and he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna eat the ones out of the bag. There's like a whole nother fry container in here practically. And like that's what ended up happening. So can you
Mm,
manifest something that quickly if we live in like a I mean,
hmm
technically, if there's no resistance, if you just kind of don't have an attachment, you believe fully in it, and you're just kind of like, that'd be cool if that happened or whatever,
hmm
a fleeting thought.
Yeah.
If in the quantum field, everything that you can think of is just available to you and you have to align with it, does that mean
It's
I just like instantly manifested that?
yes, because I also had this weird thought just now that what if the quote unquote intrusive thought was like a little, just a little spark to bring you back into the present moment to invite you to choose something better. Not that it was necessarily going to happen, like you weren't really going to get mowed down in the middle of the intersection, but then it led you to having the next experience that brought you back into the present moment. It made you aware that you could create something better, and then you did.
Oh, I love that. That makes a lot of sense. Like,
It was
just
just
in
little,
general.
it was a little invitation from the universe to choose better for yourself.
Yeah. Which, I mean, at the end of the day, I guess everything is like that. Everything is an invitation. It tells you where you are vibrationally. You go
Hmm
outside, your horse steps on your foot. You can decide to get mad, or you can decide to, like, I don't know. I don't know what the alternative is. What be appreciative of your body, start setting boundaries. I don't know. But I like that concept because one of the things that I've been working on in my meditations is choosing thoughts or like I want the good feeling thoughts to come first because I have practiced a vibration of like almost like anger or fear first. Like if something happens with one of my animals, I'm immediately like angry that I didn't do the right thing, or I'm fearful, or I'm like, oh, they're gonna die or whatever. Like that used to be my old narrative for a really long time, as you know. And since I've been meditating, I'm recognizing that like now when things happen, the ideas of wellness come first. Like I'm like, oh, it'll be fine. I'll change the supplement
Mm-hmm.
or I'll, it's like that energy of well-being is coming first. And so, but it's crazy because like it takes a while to change that if you've been practicing that other way for a while.
Yeah, and I think like that's why the awareness thing is like such a superpower because if you're not aware that that is happening, you're not even aware that your little intrusive thought is coming in, then I don't think you necessarily get ran down in the intersection, but you also miss the opportunity to have proof that you are so potent and powerful and things can happen so quickly when you're not attached. So, I mean, the intrusive thought thing, I mean, we joke about it all the time, right? Because like it's, I just immediately I'm like, intrusive thought, like clear cancel Lily. And then I'm like aware that I was aware that that was happening. And I don't get too caught up in, was that actually going to happen? I kind of am just like, it's funny, right? Like, it's like, and Johnny will say it now too. It's like, intrusive thought, my intrusive thought is. And I'm like, so it is fun to go and use that moment to then choose something more fun. I clear cancel, delete it, and then I just don't think about it anymore. But like the next step could be, but what could be better than that? Like in this current moment right now, maybe it's just a reminder that like, hey, you could be manifesting cool shit right now if you were like paying attention. And so maybe I'll do that. Every time I have an intrusive thought, I'm going to use it as an invitation to be current and present in that moment and decide in that exact moment what could be better right now than that. And that's what I'm going to do
Yeah, I
instead
like
of
that. I'm gonna
just
do that
clearing it
too.
instead.
Yeah, that's a good point. How can I totally shift this? Start reminding my body to change its chemicals. Not allowed to be addicted to the stress hormones anymore.
Oh, no, thank you. I'm so over the stress hormones.
Yeah, they're pretty wild. How have your meditations been going lately? Have you had any like cool experiences in them?
You know what's interesting is that my have we talked we've talked a lot about Shaylee's meditation bender. I was
Mhm.
off the meditation train and I'm just back on it. So I'm not bendering, but I'm being consistent. Um, I'm I'm not at bender level. But I can say that it's so interesting if I do guided meditations, like if I participate in them, I'll have those experiences, but they're never like mind-blowing. But what happens is my dreams that evening usually are. Um,
Yeah,
and then my ability to, when I am guiding the meditations, seem like they get up leveled from if I'm just doing the meditations all the time. So yeah, it's not usually in my meditation, but it is the dreams after or my daily life, I think, in my waking time where like crazy things happen. So it's a little different for me, but I've also never done one of my own meditations because people tend to say that about them. So maybe I should do that, but I just can't get myself to do that. Like, oh,
to listen to your own. I know.
yeah, is that
I
weird?
remember like we did a thing where we were both doing like multiple guided meditations. I can't remember if it was in our barn boundaries or like what it was in one of our offerings. And I like wanted to go through with everybody. Maybe it was the Vision Quest. And like I just heard my voice in the beginning and I was like, ah, gosh, I'm not going to be able to focus on this. And anytime people are like, your voice is so soothing, I'm like, what? Let me tell you, I don't have a lisp like this in real life.
Well, our meditation voices are different than when we're talking.
Oh, that's true.
You know what I mean? Like I go into a different zone if I'm going to do a meditation. I know people are going to be like laying there with their earphones on. I'm very cognizant of what my voice sounds like, and right now I'm just like blah blah. So
Oh, that's true. That's a good point. Well, that's interesting that you bring that up about the dreams because my dreams are usually wild. I've been seeing so much sacred geometry, and then I was all validated by the book that I'm reading because the page that I read this morning was like, yeah. And when you're halfway there, you're like starting to see sacred geometry. And he was bringing up how it can look very like real and bright in colors and like 3D, or it can look like flat, like waves. And that's what mine looks like right now. Like it would be like a mandala on a wall and it
Mm.
doesn't have any color. It's just like the black and then it's like white lines or whatever. And that's like the space that I'm in. And I was like, yes, I'm like halfway there, whatever. Like getting to the point because I am like obsessed right now about awakening my pineal gland. And
People are going to want to know what book you're reading. So what book is it?
oh, it's The Becoming Supernatural by
Oh, okay.
Dr. Joe Dispenza. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with awakening the pineal gland. But my newest little deep dive is going to be the frequency of color and how
Mm.
color affects our thoughts, emotions, our state of being. And then, of course, I'm gonna tie it to
Mm.
animals. I did buy. Justin was gone this weekend, and he asked me what I did all weekend, and I was like, "Well, I meditated for 5 hours a day." And bought 6 books and some clothes online. I literally did not know what to do with my time because it's cold. It's like cold out. I didn't really feel like doing anything with the horses. I'm curious, does this happen to you? Well, no, because you don't really live where it's cold.
I
Here's
don't.
my like problem with the winter. One, I'm a winter person to preface this. I actually love the winter. But because like the ground gets frozen, my horse is like staying in at night in the winter time. I feel like I can never do anything with them because the sun goes down. Like it's like perfect because it's cool out, there's no bugs. It's like the perfect time to do stuff with them. But I don't want to rob them of like 30 minutes of their turnout time, which is so ridiculous because my horses will pretty much live out 24/7 if the weather is good. But it's just kind of funny because I didn't have anything to do this weekend. Like he was like, "Oh, did you do anything with the horses?" And I was like, "No," because I had the guilts because I didn't
The
want to.
guilts. And the
Yeah,
guilts.
I didn't want to rob them of turnout time for them to come and spend time with me in the barn and then in the arena where they might not want to be. I don't know, but I think that's just like where I am in life right now because Kip's 18 and he's never loved being ridden, but he's done it because he was kind of like my only one. And Biggie, we know I'm never gonna ride. You know, he's my retired guy. But Fern, like Kip is like to the point where he's like, quit pulling me out of the field. Like, you got a solid little 4-year-old. You need to start working with her. You guys need to get acquainted. Like, so it's so funny because for the last 10 years, he's been my go-to that I go to for literally everything. I pull him. He's always who I will choose first, even if I'm hand grazing. And lately, he's like, listen, it's time to fly the nest. It's time to choose somebody else. And I think I'm resistant to that.
So funny. Yeah, it doesn't get cold here. But our winter is not wintering. It's very dry so far. So that's mildly scary because then that means the fires will be firing. So it's
Oh
not
yeah.
necessarily a good thing. But yeah, it doesn't get cold like that here. It's pretty beautiful. It's like 65 right now and very sunny. I don't know, a light breeze. Makes
I
me
know.
makes me
So
feel awkward
nice.
most of the time when I talk to anybody else anywhere on the planet.
I don't think you should feel awkward. I think you can appreciate it. And also, that should be other people's invitations to think a better feeling thought about their weather. It's so funny how the weather controls people and the way they feel, and it either creates happiness or suffering. And actually, a dog that I talked to today was telling his person that she kind of is believing that pain and suffering go together and that like humans in general use pain and suffering kind of in the same context or like as interchangeable. And he was bringing forward the idea of pain is just pain and suffering is like the energy and intention that you're putting behind the pain.
Mhm.
And it was cool because he was like trying to like break it down for her. Like, yeah, you can have this pain or inflammation in your body, and it kind of just is. Like it's a symptom of what's going on in your body. But then you create suffering around it and you put this whole story and all this energy into the pain and you grow it. But it's so fascinating because we do that as humans all the time. We always like we can never just like look at a tree and be like, and just see it as a tree. We're like, oh, that's a cool tree. Pretty big, a little crooked. Like, wonder what kind of tree it is. We can't just like let it be a tree.
I think I'm getting better at that. I was really not getting better at that for a long time. I was stuck in the very much of like the fix it. And then we talked about my overwhelm. And then we talked about like how it just became like there's so many different options and different ways to like fix the dog or fix the horse. It could be their feet, it could be their body, it could be the set. Like it's just, and then it becomes like, I can't do this. But as of lately, Rocco's been mildly lame. He's older. Got waffles for him. Got him a shot that could potentially give him cancer on accident. Like, but he's moving great. So, but he's still stiff. And when he would get up, and I found myself not agonizing over it like I used to. I was just like, oh yeah, that's where he's at right now. And I was like, "Oh, who is this?" And I was like, what can I do about it? I can get the supplements that, I can do something more now. I'm stepping up his, maintenance game. Um, but I found myself not like, oh, agonizing over it and going, oh my God, I'm not doing enough. And I'm like, no, I am doing enough. I've seen there's an issue. I'm researching things, not clearly enough obviously. And but also I just rejected the idea that anything bad would come from this particular shot that I gave that I somehow did not remember Shaylee said that specific thing, just whatever you do, don't give him that thing. And then I did it. And then when I got back, I was like, I don't know, they gave him a shot or something. And she's like, I hope it wasn't such and such. And I was like, I don't know. And then I looked at the receipt and I was like, oh God. So then I was like, well, wait, I took everything they gave him up to the light before because they got rabies shots. It's the one thing I vaccinate for because we have squirrels and they have a high rate of rabies out here and they're always
They
latching on.
do?
Yeah, ground squirrels, which
Oh,
is,
the little dudes in the bot in the well,
mhm,
and your dogs also deliberately rip them out of their
I
holes,
know.
so
So they get bit a lot. So I'm like, well, I'm not trying to. And also, my boyfriend has had rabies because he got bit by a cat with rabies.
what?
Did you not know he had rabies?
No.
He had it for a long time before they figured out what it
Oh
was.
my God, what an adventure. What happened to him? We need to
Um, they had a
dive
cat.
into this.
Well, they had a cat that bred with a bobcat.
Oh
And
my
a
God.
cat, their cat, now that black cat that's there.
Oh my God.
She had bobcat babies.
She's tiny.
She's savage. The only,
Wow.
yeah. And there was kittens, and he got bit. His sister got bit. Unknowingly, his sister had already been vaccinated for rabies because she worked at a sanctuary, so she did not have symptoms. Um, he had symptoms of like flu-like symptoms, and he just thought he was sick and didn't make a correlation. That was like around Thanksgiving, I think he said. And then by the time Christmas Day came, he had been sick that whole time and in lots of pain and like his feet, and like he was acting really irrational, like really anger outbursts, like out of nowhere. And finally, it was so we just talked about this, so the story's very fresh in my mind because I said I got my dogs vaccinated for rabies. And he was like, "Why?" And I was like, "You of all people should not be asking the question why, because mostly I'm more aware of it because of your story." Um, and his relatives were like, "We're going to call 911 if you continue to refuse to go to the doctor." Because he's like, "I'm not going to the doctor. It's Christmas Day." And what had happened, it had reached his brain.
Oh
So
my
once it
God.
does that, like, you're not in good shape. So I went the day after Christmas and they got in and they were like, "Oh, you have rabies." So then had to immediately start a very aggressive round of 6 weeks of shots every day. So
Oh
don't let
my
yourself get
God.
rabies because the actual treatment after is much more painful than, I don't
Oh
know.
my
You can't,
gosh.
but there's, so,
Wait, so
so
how did
I
they
so I
even
vaccinate for
discover
rabies.
it?
They can
Does it come up in your blood?
I think so. They can test, or there's the symptoms are pretty, I think, across the board for it too.
Oh,
Because the only way to test the animal obviously is chop its head
yeah.
off, right? So, but that had been long since past the time to be able
Yeah.
to do that. I didn't ask him what
Wow.
happened to the kitten though. But
Yeah.
anyways, I couldn't
Maybe
have.
we don't want to know.
Maybe we don't want to know. Uh, it probably went off and did what rabid kittens do. I have no idea.
My God. Savage.
So I
Savage
vaccinate
of
my
it.
dogs for rabies. That is the vaccine that they get. They don't get any of the other ones. That all started because I take everything to the light, right? Like everything that they're going to get, any procedure, any of my family members, relatives that are going to get a procedure, I take the doctors up, I take the team up to the light, and I hope that, wish for their lives and their family lives and their own lives to be nice and balanced. So they come in for surgery or they come in to make a decision, then they're clear-headed. It's like a whole thing. So I do take when I have to give them the flea treatment, and we've talked about that, where I don't really
Mm-hmm.
love doing that, but I had fleas for the first time this year, and so did you.
Yeah, I
Had to
know.
take the flea treatment up to the light, clear it, cleanse it. Any lessons or anything surrounding it were not needed.
That is just so crazy too. That freaking flea treatment. I was so convinced that it was like potential. Like I was like, literally, it's a 50-50. Could kill you or you could be able to manage it. And I'm
Well,
like,
I
that
don't know
is
if it's 50-50, is it?
no, it's not. But in my
The
mind,
stuff
it
that they
was.
eat, there is the one that is fleas, like it's like all kinds of things. And I've had two people that I know just personally have their dogs have major reactions to that. So
Yeah, and I had to give the pill because Arlo
oh,
couldn't do the because she and Maisie were playing and remember she got poisoned from the drops
oh
and from the
yeah.
collar because they were biting each other's necks. So I was like, so then I had to get past my worst
God.
fear of feeding them And then, but you know what I always think of, and I can't remember if you said it or if like someone else told me. It might have been Donna that told me this, but um, I was like super fearful about something. It might have been Justin dying. It was someone dying. There's always like a fear of loss. Well, the old me,
There
prior
used
meditation bender me.
used used to be a common fear.
Yeah, there used to be a common fear of loss, and it was like a it was like a deep fear. It was like a deep loss where I was like, I can't even love. I don't want to love anybody because I can't have any loss. I was like terrified of loss, which is so fascinating because, and I used to say this too, I like have such a good relationship with the afterlife, but I have such a fear of loss. And I mean, if you want to hear about any of that, that's in like 2024 podcasts. But um now I can't remember why I even started this
The
conversation.
dogs eating the flea and tick pill.
Oh, yeah, I guess I was just like my fear of loss was so crazy. And I think it was Donna that told me, like, don't forget that your animals have like different soul contracts. So, like, you're putting so much weight on this one decision that you're making, and you're like, oh, I think my animal might die from this and it's going to be all my fault and I didn't do enough and like the sense of responsibility and all that. Well, like you're not the only energy that they're connected to in this lifetime. Like they might have a soul contract with another animal that they're sticking around for and you have no
Mhm.
idea. So why would you um and a dog told me the other day like don't suffering is just like or worrying is like suffering twice. And I was like, "Oh yeah. That is so true." So it's like, why would you? That's why I like your idea of like the invitation. So when that intrusive thought comes up about my dog is going to die if I give him this thing, then I could be like, oh, this is an invitation to see the highest and best good or
Mhm.
like the best possible outcome.
You know what's so perfect is that loop-de-loops right back to the first initial crow squirrel, where talking about that sense of responsibility and the let them theory being like you're releasing responsibility. And there was this conversation I was listening to when it was like you thinking that you're responsible and stepping in and not letting them and helping, quote unquote, helping them. Um, it's hard with family members, I understand, and it's also hard if you're whatever freaking number my boyfriend is. Um, in the numerology, in case you guys are unclear on what I'm talking about, um, is that if you don't let them, you could be slowing down their learning process. Like there's lessons that we are here to learn, and by you stepping in, feeling like you can help and you can be the savior, and I have so much of that going on in so many different realms of my life right now, where I'm like it is not necessarily easy to watch somebody make mistakes, but like, God, nobody stopped me from making so many mistakes. I made all of the mistakes. No one was stopping me. I was free and wild to fuck everything up. And I did, and I fully survived. And I learned so much through it. And I am who I am because of it. And I feel like if someone would have stepped in too many times, it would have slowed that process down so much, and I wouldn't be where I am right now. And I wouldn't be able to
Hmm.
hold space for people to do that in their own lives. Like I said, it's much harder for family members. But I don't know, it's like this fine line of being supportive and stepping in and helping, and also slowing down their own process and blocking them from getting on with it. You know what I mean? So I don't know, a
Hmm.
lot of discernment smashed in there.
Yeah, back to honoring free will,
Mm.
which, yeah, I think this is a good piece to end on. But it also makes me think of your numerology because I agree. Like in my experience, if I wouldn't have had people, like if people would have like handed things to me versus been like, no, you need to research things, you need to look it up and make up your own mind, then maybe I wouldn't be like if someone was like, oh yeah, this is exactly what you need to do. I don't know if I would be where I am today. But if I think of my numerology, I'm like a natural researcher and I'm like naturally very thorough. Like speaking of, you've made me think of this now that you've mentioned his number. But like I am naturally very thorough and like in my numerology it says you will become a master of every subject because you will deep dive on every subject and like It even says in there on like one piece that it's like when you go to the doctor, it's probably best that you tell the doctor what you think your diagnosis is, and then you can work back from there because you will have researched it extensively before even. I'm like, that is so me. But yours is, remember, you have age blocks in yours. So like yours was
Mm.
like from birth to 20 years old, you were like trial and error, fucking everything up. Like that's what it is. And then it's like from 20 to 40, you were like getting a little more clear on what you wanted and what, and then it's like 40 on, you're in like the mastery thing where you're like integrating and doing all the things. So it's just kind of funny how that works out because your numerology literally is like you had to just test all of the limits and do all the things and like just decide where you were going to end up in the middle.
It is really helpful for me because when I look at him and the things he chooses to do, knowing that about him and how accurate it was when you were reading it off to me, it lets me let him. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? I'm like, well, Shaylee said, and so just is like,
That is why our barn boundaries, is it barn bound? Which one's the webinar? Is it barn boundaries?
I think I can't remember. I think so. I
Okay,
think
we
there's
have
a
something
couple.
coming up in like March. It's 3 hours long. Pretty sure it's called Barn
Oh yeah.
Boundaries. We talk about this extent, like this is why it's so important. We smashed so much into that webinar. We're going to do it again this year. It's like learning the energetics of your horse's body, learning your numerology, learning your human design, because all of these things are so important to being able to set boundaries and to like honor who you are. Like if you know, if you believe in numerology and astrology and all those things, and like it's something that can be validating for you, there's so many permission slips in all of it, and we talk about it for like 3 hours, and we don't know what it's called or when it's coming, but that is a thing that we
I
offer.
believe that the hefty load um webinar that we do is that one. It's like a workshop.
Okay, yeah.
The one we do have coming up, you can still sign up for because this potty is gonna potty. This podcast is gonna come batty. I was gonna say batty and podcast, and it was a potty. This potty is coming out. Most likely I'll put it out. I'll edit it today and we'll do it tomorrow morning. So you guys still have time if you're listening in real time to join the manifesting magic. No, you don't need a horse. No, actually, we don't really relate it back to the horses. I mean, you can.
Hmm.
But it's mostly about all the things in life. That's coming up next week, our live call that is integrated in with that. But there is a portal that you can start to engage with in a Facebook group first. And so
Yeah,
you
and
still
it's
have time
cool
for that.
because people are telling us, like someone just made a post today and they were like, this really works. Like I'm manifesting this truck that I wanted and my horse trailer. And
Mm.
someone else was like, I just sold my truck. I listed my truck for sale last week and it sold the next day. So it really like it's cool how if you have the right tools, you set yourself up for success. Everyone's power songs are great in there.
Yeah.
Community's already bumping in there. It's
Yeah.
fun. I've been enjoying seeing everyone's comments. So come
Yeah.
join us.
Yeah, it is fun. Um, the other thing that we have coming up that we want to share with you is the Mustang retreat. We have a couple spots left. That's magical AF. We do it in Arizona and we picked springtime this year. So last
Yeah.
year we were in the middle of summer because we just last minute found this place and it was already booked. We were smart this time and when we left, we booked it for the for this year because it was so good. Spending time meditating in different places with the Mustangs,
On the river with the
with them,
Mustangs,
like actually with them. Like we
actually
had
with
one
them.
stallion come. He was our little guardian. And I'm
It
so
was
obsessed
so
with him. He
good.
lives that creature lives in my soul. Like 3 feet away from us and just came and meditated with us. Cleared
Yeah,
the
it was
space for
really
us
cool.
and escorted us out. We ended up in being surrounded by multiple herds of Mustangs, which I didn't think was a thing that
We
happened, which
actually got a little backed in the corner.
we were like, but actually surrounded by the Mustangs. And it was great and magical and also like, okay, like maybe it's
Time to
time to
move
go.
out.
Time to
Yeah, it
go.
was so good. Actually, that was completely our fault too, because we started a meditation and then Amber's meditation morphed into me guiding a connection and the entire herd was sleeping. And then I was like, all right, everybody shift your energy to the herd and just like open up your heart to the herd. Next thing you know, they're wild, like kicking each
And
other.
coming at us. They were coming
Yeah,
to find us and they did find us.
they did find us. We had to move out of their little hole so that they could all, they just got so amped. Like they loved the energy and they were like running around, playing with each other, like showing us a real show. And then we're all like, all right, we got to go. So we start leaving and
They
they joined
followed
with
us.
another herd and followed
Fol-
us. They're literally like cantering after us. And it's funny because my friend Donna has like gone and seen Mustangs in their natural habitat like many, many times. And she's like, this is like the full experience. Like people do not get this. And then halfway through, because I kept looking at Amber and I'm like, oh my, they're gonna follow us all the way to the truck. Like we gotta figure something. And then I was like, oh no, we left the loop open. Like we connected with them and then we had to leave and we weren't able to close the loop. So we had to like get everybody to be like, thank you. You're good. Like we're gonna close the loop now. And then they all went off on their own
Well,
ways. But
right before we realized that a whole separate herd, as we were exiting and they were following us, a whole separate herd cut us off. They came out of the bushes in front of us, and I was like, we gotta like wrap this up. Like, but we did.
we did.
We
And
don't want to sound too intense, but
yeah,
I don't know how many people go out with a small group of people and meditate with a freaking herd, but they were into it. So I'm imagining that this won't be any less magical.
yeah. Don't
So,
worry, we got you covered. We rent a van. It's an all-inclusive thing. We go out to dinner, there's live music. It's gonna be April 6th through 8th, and we have
a big van, we just drive you
yeah,
all
big
around.
van that
Bertha,
we drive everybody around.
Bertha.
We chase sunsets, which is fun. We are going at a time of year too where at the place that we're staying at, the little resort, they have live music and a
Mhm.
cookout. And so we'll
Mhm.
probably do that one of the nights.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like right on the river. I did like a cold water plunge. I did a cold water plunge last time. I mean, it was great. There were so many fun things. It was a blast. So come hang out with us. The links are literally everywhere on all the social media.
They'll
I'm
be on
sure they'll be in the
the
show notes.
yeah. Sage is like, you said that we were wrapping this up, and here you
I
both
know.
still are.
I know.
Oh,
Oh, go ahead.
here comes Arlo. I just saw her little ears pass in the
Yeah,
doorway.
she's actually the one that got Sage up. She was like, "Hey, she's not listening to me. I'm gonna have to call in reinforcement."
I
We
gotta
call
wrap.
Sage the manager, which is so funny because when we're outside playing toys, if I tell Arlo to stop, she goes and gets Sage, and Sage comes and like barks at us and harasses us to throw the toys. She's the manager.
Oh, so
Mm-hmm.
cute.
All
All
right,
right.
thanks for listening, guys.
If you guys liked anything in this episode, like it, share it, give us a little review wherever you're listening to, whether it's Spotify or YouTube. Wait, they do that in YouTube? Leave
Yeah,
us a review somewhere. We're trying to grow
yeah,
our podcast this year. That's our intention.
yeah.
Grow this baddie. So help us out. Help us out. All right.
See ya.
Goodbye.